It's easy to picture ancient Rome as marble and gold, a city glowing forever under a Mediterranean sun. But here's a strange question to start us off. What if the greatest empire on Earth was already quietly cracking at the exact moment it looked most perfect? Imagine standing in Rome at its peak. The streets are loud, crowded, alive. Fresh bread steams in the morning air. Water flows endlessly from public fountains, cleaner and more reliable than what many European cities would have centuries later. From the outside, this place looks unstoppable. And yet hidden inside all that beauty, something fragile is already forming. That tension between greatness and vulnerability is where our story begins. Before we sink deeper into this world together, let me gently ask you something. If stories like this help you slow down, feel curious, or see history in a new way, take a second to support the channel in whatever way feels right to you. Like a subscription, a quiet comment from wherever you're watching, those small gestures really do keep these stories alive. And if you feel like it, tell me where you are right now. I read every message. Now settle in, get comfortable, and let's continue. Rome in its golden age is not just an empire of soldiers and senators. It's an empire of ordinary people. Around 1 million residents live in the city itself during the 1st and 2nd centuries, according to modern estimates based on grain records and housing remains. Most of them are not wealthy. They live in tall apartment buildings called insulae, some rising 6 or 7 stories high. These buildings are cramped, often dangerous, and sometimes collapse or burn. The poet Juvenal even jokes that surviving Rome at night is a kind of sport. Humor aside, it tells us something real. This shining empire rests on very human nerves. Still, Rome gives its people things no empire had ever offered at this scale. Free grain distributions keep hundreds of thousands fed. Public baths are everywhere, not just for the rich, but for dock workers, shopkeepers, and former slaves. In places like Pompeii, preserved by volcanic ash, we can still see snack bars, graffiti, and jokes scratched into walls. These are not myths. These are lives paused mid-sentence. And as Rome grows more comfortable, more confident, it also grows more complicated. Power concentrates. Inequality deepens. The city feels eternal, but history has a way of smiling right before it changes its mind. And that quiet contradiction is exactly where our journey continues. As the city keeps breathing around us, something else begins to shape daily life in quieter ways: money, work, and the promise of opportunity. Rome is not just powerful because it conquers. It is powerful because it pays. Soldiers receive regular wages. Builders are hired non-stop. Merchants move grain, wine, olive oil, and ideas across thousands of miles. By the early imperial period, Roman coins circulate from Britain to Egypt. Archaeologists have found Roman denarii as far away as India, confirmed by hoards along ancient trade routes described in the Periplus of the Erythraean Sea. That is not just trade. That is globalization, ancient style. But here is the twist. Rome's economy depends heavily on something uncomfortable: slavery. Historians estimate that at certain points, enslaved people make up around 1/3 of the population in Italy. They cook meals, clean homes, teach children, mine silver, and row ships. Some can earn or buy freedom, and inscriptions show freedmen becoming successful shop owners or even local officials. Still, the system runs on human lives treated as property. It creates wealth, yes, but it also creates tension, that never fully disappears. Have you ever wondered what an empire looks like when comfort for some is built on silence from others? The government tries to keep everything balanced. Emperors fund massive building projects not just for beauty, but to keep people employed and loyal. The Colosseum alone, completed under Emperor Titus, uses stone from quarries dozens of miles away and employs thousands of workers. Pliny the Elder writes about the vast resources pulled from the earth to satisfy Roman demand, often with a mix of awe and quiet worry. Even he senses that abundance has a cost, and slowly, almost politely, small cracks appear. Coins are mixed with less silver to stretch the treasury. Prices begin to rise. Soldiers want higher pay. The system still works, but it needs constant motion to survive. Rome cannot pause. It must expand, spend, and impress. And as that pressure builds, the empire starts leaning more heavily on the one thing that always changes history power itself. Somewhere far from marble halls and busy markets, the fate of Rome drifts toward a quiet field in the Eastern Balkans. No cheering crowds, no grand monuments, just heat dust and tired soldiers shifting their weight under heavy armor. This is the Battle of Adrianople, fought in the year 378, and most people have never heard of it. Yet many historians quietly agree it changes everything. The Roman Emperor Valens believes he has an easy victory waiting. Across the plain stands a group of Gothic refugees, not an invading army in the usual sense, but families pushed across the Danube by hunger and fear, fleeing the advance of the Huns. Roman officials had promised them land and food. Instead, corruption takes over. Ancient sources like Ammianus Marcellinus describe officials selling dog meat at outrageous prices, even trading food for Gothic children taken as slaves. You can almost feel the anger building. What would you do in their place? Valens ignores advice to wait for reinforcements. Pride whispers that glory should not be shared. Under the brutal summer sun, Roman legions march too quickly, thirsty and disorganized. Then the Gothic cavalry returns to the battlefield, crashing into the Roman flank like a sudden storm. The tight formations that once conquered the world begin to fold. Ammianus writes that the dust was so thick, soldiers could not see who was friend or enemy. By nightfall, Emperor Valens is dead, his body never clearly identified. Nearly 2/3 of the Eastern Roman army is gone in a single afternoon. This battle does not end the empire overnight, but it proves something shocking. Rome can be beaten badly by people it once considered manageable outsiders. From this moment on, Rome increasingly relies on foreign soldiers, mercenaries, and uneasy alliances. The old confidence never fully returns, and as the dust settles over that forgotten field, another question quietly rises, one that leads us deeper into the choices Rome makes next, and the consequences it cannot undo. After the smoke clears and the battlefield grows quiet, something subtle but irreversible begins to change inside the Roman world. No walls fall immediately. No capital burns. Instead, Rome makes a choice that feels practical, at the time even merciful. And that choice reshapes the future. In the years following Adrianople, Rome realizes it cannot simply destroy the Gothic peoples. There are too many of them, and the army is too thin. So the empire does something new. It allows entire Gothic groups to settle within imperial borders, not as individual recruits, but as semi-independent communities. They're called foederati allies, bound by treaty rather than loyalty. On paper, it sounds smart. Rome gains soldiers without paying to train them. The Goths gain land and safety. Everyone wins, or so it seems. But here is the quiet problem. These new soldiers do not fully adopt Roman discipline, language, or identity. They fight for their own leaders under their own banners. The historian Peter Heather points out that this marks a shift from a unified Roman army to a patchwork force with divided interests. Imagine trying to run a team where half the players answer to someone else. How long before cracks appear? And they do. Within a generation, a Gothic commander named Alaric rises through the ranks. He serves Rome, negotiates with Rome, and grows frustrated with Rome. When his demands are ignored, he marches west. In the year 410, his forces sack the city of Rome itself. For the first time in 800 years, the unthinkable happens. Saint Jerome writes that the world seemed to end that day. So here's a question worth sitting with. Was the real defeat at Adrianople not the loss of an army, but the loss of control? Because once Rome begins sharing power without trust, the empire becomes something fragile, something unfamiliar. And that fragility leads us directly to the final moment, where we ask whether this forgotten battle merely weakened Rome or quietly decided the fate of nations yet to be born. Slowly, almost quietly, the consequences of that decision begin to travel far beyond Rome itself. This is the part most history books rush through, but it may be the most important of all. After Adrianople, the Roman Empire does not collapse overnight. Life goes on. Markets reopen. Laws are still written. Emperors still wear purple robes. But something fundamental has shifted beneath the surface. Rome is no longer shaping events. It is reacting to them. As Gothic groups settle inside imperial lands, they bring their families, customs, and leaders. Over time, these settlements harden into something new. Not provinces, not Roman cities, but the seeds of future kingdoms. Historians such as Walter Goffart note that these arrangements blur the line between empire and outsider, creating spaces where Roman authority fades without a formal surrender. Think about that for a moment. Rome does not lose territory in one dramatic battle. It slowly leases its future away one treaty at a time. By the early 5th century, the western provinces feel different. Local Roman elites begin cooperating more with barbarian leaders than with distant emperors. Taxes flow less reliably to Rome. Armies answer more readily to generals than to the state. It is not chaos. It is something more unsettling. A quiet transfer of power. Here is where the battle's shadow stretches across centuries. The Visigoths will eventually rule much of Spain. The Franks will build the foundations of modern France. The Ostrogoths will govern Italy itself. These are not random outcomes. They trace back to the moment Rome chose accommodation over integration after Adrianople. So let me ask you something gently. If you were alive, then would this have looked like decline? Or would it have felt like reasonable compromise in a difficult world? Because this is how history often works. Not with thunder, but with paperwork. Not with endings, but with adjustments that seem harmless at the time. And as we move into the final part of our story, we will step back and ask the biggest question of all. Was Adrianople a forgotten battle, or was it the quiet turning point that decided the fate of nations long before they even had names? And now, as the noise of armies fades and the dust finally settles, we are left with something far more powerful than a battlefield. we are left with a lesson. The Battle of Adrianople, fought in the year 378, is often remembered as a Roman defeat. But that description is far too small. Rome had lost battles before. Rome had even lost entire armies before. What made Adrianople different was not the blood spilled in one afternoon. It was the choice made afterward. Rome chose not to reform fast enough. It chose short-term stability over long-term strength. It chose to manage a problem instead of solving it. Historian Peter Heather points out that after Adrianople, the empire increasingly relied on non-Roman forces to defend Roman land, slowly hollowing out its own military core. The empire still looked powerful. It still sounded powerful. But its muscles were weakening, and here is the uncomfortable truth. Most people living at the time did not feel like the world was ending. They adapted, they negotiated, they carried on. Decline, when it happens, rarely announces itself with trumpets. It arrives softly disguised as practicality. There is something deeply human in that, is there not? How often do we delay the hard decision because the easy one works for now? How often do we tell ourselves that tomorrow will be a better time to change? Rome did not fall because of one battle. It fell because of a pattern of choices that followed it. Yet this story is not only a warning, it is also a reminder of how nations are born. From the ashes of Roman authority rose new cultures, new laws, and new identities. Europe did not descend into darkness forever. It transformed. The kingdoms that emerged carried fragments of Rome within them: language, roads, law, memory. In that sense, Adrianople did not just decide the fate of an empire. It helped shape the world that many of us still live in today. So as you lie here listening, maybe winding down after a long day, let this thought drift gently through your mind. History is not only about heroes and disasters. It is about moments when people choose what feels safe instead of what is necessary. Thank you truly for spending this quiet time with me and for letting this story unfold in your evening. If this journey brought you a sense of calm curiosity or even a small smile, I am grateful. Rest now, breathe slowly, and when you are ready, stay close. Another forgotten story from the deep corners of history is waiting to be told.